Hello, Adam.
Pretty great. Hello, how are you?
I'm Deborah.
Hi, Deborah. Pleasure.
Deborah
Yeah.
is my new good friend. We met in the Arroyo.
In the Arroyo, boy, you meet some people in the Arroyo, don't you?
I do. It is a
Awesome. It's a little
blessed place
hub.
of gathering.
That's actually a cool story to start with, is how
So last Sunday, I was giving the spiritual message at my church, and I always write them out first. And so Wednesday morning, I was trying really, really hard to write my talk. And I had all these books and all these old talks, and I was becoming really frenetic. And then I started having all this negative thoughts like, I can't do this. I'm stupid. I'll never get it. What are people going to think? And then the crazy one was, what happens if I get up there and I have nothing to say, which is never going to happen. And so I caught myself and I thought, okay, what can I do? Well, I can take JB, my dog, to the Arroyo, and I can go see all those incredible rock sculptures. That'll make me feel better. I can go walk a labyrinth. So JB and I went to the Arroyo, and I'd always wondered, because I've been there a lot, I've wondered, who created this beauty? Who created this beauty? And we started to walk, and all of a sudden, in the distance, I saw this guy, obviously John. And when I came up there, I was so delighted to be able to say thank you for creating this beauty. And we just connected just like that. I mean, we went deep immediately, right? It didn't take anything. Within like 2 or 3 minutes, we were having this deep, deep conversation. And John was telling me about his passion and why he's creating all of this amazing sculptures and everything in the Arroyo. And then we talked about spirituality. I shared with him that I'm very passionate and I do things around the unhoused. We had this absolutely incredible conversation. And as I was leaving, I looked at John and said, this was a divine appointment. This was a divine appointment. And I had left my home, absolutely stuck in my ego. And my favorite acronym for ego is edging God out. And then when I returned, I was back in spirit. And why? What takes us back into spirit in that case was having a deep, meaningful, genuine connection. And my talk, I was telling John what my talk title was. I was very jazzed to hear that Pope Leo's motto is "In the one, we are one." And we talked about that, about how brilliant that is, that he made it a really inclusive motto. And our meeting just felt like that. In the one,
absolutely.
we were one. And I think we both knew when I walked away that we were going to be friends. I mean, and so, So that was a beautiful meeting.
Yeah, and she invited me to come attend the service to see her speak what she just spoke and some other beautiful gems. One of my favorites was we don't say unbelievable anymore.
No, we don't say unbelievable.
It's beautifully believable.
Yeah, because one of the things I'm trying to become much more aware of is my languaging. And I was saying to a girlfriend the other day when she was telling me something amazing, oh, that's so unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And I caught myself saying, that's a negative. When we say, oh, that's unbelievable, we're actually negating it. So I came up with BB, beautifully believable.
Beautifully believable.
Yeah, so I'm inviting people to use BB, beautifully believable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's BB, baby.
It's BB. So.
And so I caught something there with that with your talks on spirituality with the edging God out. Are you big into like Wayne Dyer? Have you read a bunch of?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay, because I know that's where I connected that to, and that I don't know, that just helps me maybe connect with maybe where you are.
Oh yeah, I would say. I mean, I occasionally will still listen to one of his talks on.
So do I.
Yeah, I love and his spirituality is definitely in alignment with mine. So yeah, for sure, he has been a teacher for me. Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
What do you call the happening that we had on Sundays, on Sunday there? Because I wouldn't call I've been calling it a spiritual gathering, but like it's kind of church adjacent, but it's not church.
Well, no, and I think that's one of the things when one considers oneself spiritual as opposed to religious. So it's a spiritual gathering. We're called the Everyday Center for Spiritual Living. So that's what the center is called. And we follow the teachings of somebody called Ernest Holmes.
Ernest Holmes.
Ernest Holmes. He is the author of our tradition. And he was very much influenced by people like Thomas Troward and Mary Eddy Baker. And so I would say our tradition is a little close to unity. That they're a little more bit of religion in there than we do. So what our tradition is called, it's called the science of mind. It has nothing to do with Scientology. Sometimes people go there.
You gotta stop and clarify.
Yeah, you always have to stop and clarify.
Anyways, this has been fun.
Yeah,
Right.
like you'd be, okay, see ya.
You just got canceled.
Yeah, we just got canceled. So it's nothing to do with that, you know?
Okay.
What we believe is that, and just going back what my talk was about, why I loved it mirrored our tradition, because we have a 5-step prayer treatment. And the first step 1 is God is all there is. And step 2 is we are each an individualized aspect in the allness of God. And that really is the same thing as saying in the one, we are one. And what Ernest teaches us is at the center of our being is peace. It's love, but we talk a lot about peace. That there's at the center of our being, our essence is peace. And it's never been disturbed. It's never been hurt. It's never been afraid. It can't be harmed. And it always is there. And while we may leave it, it never leaves us. It is always there. So that is what we believe. We believe in the power of prayer. We also believe in how important our languaging and our thinking is. Ernest teaches, I think saying changing your thinking, I don't think, for me, that's only half of the puzzle. You know, I think we have to change our thinking. We have to change our feeling. That can help with our manifestation. So we talk a lot about changing our thinking and how do we do that? You know, how do you change? How do you stop those things in your mind? Go on.
It's so strange to even attempt to change your thinking without the application of something like language. Or language is kind of where you do apply the thinking. It is like a reaction to change your language. You can wake up and be, all right, I'm grateful. Let me practice my gratitude. And as you get kind of bored with that, it takes all of 2 minutes in the morning, and then you're just off to the races. It becomes by rote. It becomes this thing that it's a better habit than having, than practicing
nothing.
Other negative thoughts, sure, but it does take like a real effort, I think, with language. A very intentional process.
It has to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we call it spiritual practice. Spiritual practice is work.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I think sometimes I have the feeling, and not that I would say this to people's face, but sometimes I do feel like sometimes people think just showing up on a Sunday is where it's at.
Yeah.
But that's a small piece of where it's at. If we don't practice the truth, if we don't do the work, then we're not going to have any change.
Yeah.
It's not going to work that way.
And it's not always glamorous.
It is not always glamorous.
Yeah, work, shadow work. It's
oh my God.
That's where the good stuff is. Like once you get in the weeds of yourself,
oh God,
you get stuck down there for a while, and then like when you come out, it's like, oh, you're grateful to breathe again.
Right.
Yeah, and
Well, and it allows you to be easier on yourself too. You're not going to be perfect every day. You're going because it requires effort, and to have that as the forefront of it's the process and it is the work rather than the outcome.
There is no spiritual destination.
It's the journey. It's the journey. It's the journey. So one thing that I talked about on Sunday that more in depth than I think I ever have was the power of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with A Course in Miracles?
I'm sorry?
Are you familiar with A Course in Miracles?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's a spiritual self-study. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Okay, that's what I was talking about.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the things I love about A Course is it really focuses that forgiveness is the way to true health and happiness. That if we can practice forgiveness, that's the way to inner peace, and that's the way to healing. And I kind of like that.
Yeah.
And so I talked about forgiveness.
Yeah, and I was so you told me you were going to talk about forgiveness beforehand, and like that already started my mind churning. It's like, okay, like I know I got some people to forgive and stuff like that, but like coincidentally, on my walk up to Old Santa Fe Trail, like I saw somebody that needed forgiveness, definitely. Remember Old Moonlight, Adam?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we named her for the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was walking that old three-legged dog, but like not close enough to say anything. But it was just like very serendipitous and divine to like me thinking about contemplating forgiveness, and I just like see you right there.
On his way to church. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's maybe a message saying, here's your opportunity.
No, exactly. Here's one for you, and then then a couple more in my vault of ghosts came up, and it's like, oh yeah, that one too.
Yeah.
And then it really worked. Like, I mean, what you were talking about, and you can share the story, your personal story of forgiveness
I'll
if you
share
like,
that.
but
Okay, sure.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, so I shared this personal story because I think sometimes people want to know, well, how do you actually do it? You know? So I had a fascinating experience last year. I had a housemate who stole thousands of dollars of beautiful stuff from me and sold it. Fascinating. Yeah. Took me a while to actually get her out, but I finally got her out. And of course, that was very, piercing for me, because I'm the type of person that opens up my heart and my soul to somebody. And it was really an awful experience. And when she left, I said to her that I felt like she needed to pay me some amends money, which of course she didn't, right? And so I did my work, and I got over it and figured, well, I'm not going to get that back. And it was, as somebody I'm quite the material girl, who's attached to her stuff, it really was, quite the injury. Well, lo and behold, guess what happens in January? She moves in next door to me. Next door. So
Awesome.
Every time I look out that window there, I could see her car.
Oh, okay. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Literally the next house.
Awesome.
This young guy that lives next door. And I kept saying to my friends, they said it must be, oh, no, it doesn't bother me. I was trying to take this spiritual high road.
Yeah.
That it didn't bother me, right?
Yeah.
So then in March, I had a 2-week period where all I could think about in my head was this conversation I wanted to have with her. I'm going to say this, and she's going to say that, and I'm going to say this. And of course, when we do that, nobody gets the script, right?
The shower combos.
Yeah. So I was doing that for about 2 weeks. And I went to church on the Sunday, and my minister talked about the power of regrets. And it was really interesting because I was sitting there. I thought, well, what do I regret? And what was really clear to me is I never, ever cussed her out or anything. What I realized I regretted was not telling her she was a blank, 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 blank piece of shit.
Yeah.
That was what I regretted, that I actually never did that.
Because that would have righted the world then.
Yeah.
You would have been safe.
I would have, yeah.
Yeah.
So as I was driving home, and I thought, I don't want to be that person.
No.
I'm being a hater. You're being a hater. I don't want to be a hater. And so I came home, and it was like, okay, what do you need to do? You need to forgive her. And so for the rest of the day, she came up in my mind. I forgive you and I release you. I forgive you and I release you. I forgive you and I release you, until I didn't need to do it anymore. And then 10 minutes later, she'd come back up. And I spent Sunday doing that, going about my thing. But I was doing that every time she came up. Okay. And it was work. It was absolute work. Well, I woke up the next morning and my consciousness had shifted. She wasn't there. So that's great. So I went and had a very busy teaching day, and I came back, and I have a balcony upstairs, and I was sitting up on my balcony upstairs reading, and all of a sudden I hear, "Can we talk?" And she's standing down there. And she says, "Can we talk?" Now, we haven't talked since she's moved in.
Bum, bum, bum.
So I go downstairs, and she walks in and she gives me an envelope.
Oh.
She said, "Here's the money. It's not all of it. I'll have the rest of it to you by Friday."
Dang.
And she looked like a wounded puppy dog.
Yeah.
I asked her how she was, and she just crumbled. I mean, talk about going through the dark night of the soul and all of that stuff. So I don't want to share her story, but she absolutely crumbled.
Sure.
And I just got up and held her. I held her in compassion while she cried.
Yeah.
That was the next day after I chose to forgive her.
That's
How powerful is that? Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's wonderful. That's powerful.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think what we have to remember is, nothing's going to happen. I mean, that's that old thing. If you want things to be different and you don't do anything different, right? That's the definition of, is it stupidity or something?
Oh, yeah. I don't
think it's
I'm the
stupidity.
definition of stupidity
No.
now. Yeah, no. Insanity.
Insanity. That's what it is. Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So that was very powerful for me. And also the fact that it really can work,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
The universe places opportunities for you to grow and learn these things, and people are sometimes forced into your life. Sometimes lessons like that are forced into your world.
Because back to like we're all one God. Like your 5 steps is more eloquent than my imagination of just like we're billions of God's phalanges like working, but we're all the same, same but different.
Yeah,
Well, when you do start seeing each other as part of the same thing rather than separate, it probably makes it. I don't know if it's easier to forgive, but maybe more important to forgive.
I think especially right now, and I was the last time when I was at the Rocks before I met you, I was doing the Labyrinth, and as I was doing the Labyrinth, I was thinking about all the people that are in my world, people I love, people that love me, blah blah blah, and then I was like, okay, and if you're really honest with yourself, you still have people that you're putting outside that circle.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can say everybody's one, but I still am putting people out of the circle. And I think at this time, especially with what's going on in our world, we really have to look at that. If we really believe in the one, we are one, how do we apply that to people that we find despicable?
Right. It's like,
that is one of the hardest questions ever, is how do you forgive like the worst people in history? How do you,
Right, bring it down. It's like, oh, that's God too.
Well, let me share the other example.
Damn it.
About the Amish.
Yeah. Okay. The Amish?
Yeah. So this was the first example I shared because I think it's very parallel as far as, oh my God, the worst thing to forgive. So in October 2006, this man, he was not Amish, you may remember this, walked into a schoolhouse and shot 10 little girls. This was in October 2006 in Pennsylvania, in an Amish community. Amish community.
Sure.
5 of them died. 5 of them were seriously injured. And they showed the world true forgiveness because the day of the killer shot himself after that. So the day of his funeral, the Amish community, including the families who had buried their daughters the day before, showed up at his funeral, hugged his wife and their family.
God, that is, I'm not strong enough to do that.
Right. Yeah.
And then,
and
then they followed it up with donating money to help the widow and her children.
Wow.
So I think, I don't think I'm that strong either.
No, I could not do that.
It takes a lot of spiritual work to get to that, to get strong enough to put that down gently.
Well, and perhaps it takes an entire community to hold each other up during that.
Yeah.
Right.
So here's the Amish community, like me as one man, if someone were to do that to my daughter, I would not be able to do that. But perhaps with like a community behind me that supported me in that and was also actively trying, maybe.
Yeah.
There's power there too, but
you ever heard of
that's a big reach.
Isn't that amazing though?
That's an amazing story.
Yeah, it's an amazing story.
You ever heard of that South African tradition like Ubuntu?
No.
Oh,
is that when they put people in the middle of the something? Okay,
yeah. Like,
that's a great one.
Yeah, well, it's all about like the oneness of everybody and stuff. I have the book at home, but like when someone in the village fucks up, like they put them in the middle of the circle. Everybody surrounds them and they just say kind things to them. And they just they literally berate them with kindness until they're not ashamed of what they did anymore, until they just feel better. Doesn't that seem like such a backwards thing to do, but also so beautiful?
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's a tough one.
You brought up an important word too, and that was shame.
Yeah.
what has helped me around that word, because I always had a hard time figuring out what the hell it was. Are you familiar with Brene Brown? Okay. Are you? Okay. She's definitely somebody worth YouTubing. She is a very well-educated woman, but she speaks about shame and vulnerability. And she defines it really easily. She says, feeling guilty is saying I did something wrong. Feeling shame is I am wrong.
There's a difference in that.
Huh?
There's a difference in that.
Yeah. So if we're feeling guilty, it's because of our behavior, right? But what she's saying, shame is when we make who we are wrong. So anyway, that really kind of helped me start to begin to understand what shame is.
Did you grow up in the church at all?
God, no.
No? I'm curious about your spiritual, where it began, the impetus, because I grew up in Catholic school, went to Catholic church as a kid, and shame was a major component.
Supposedly from my Catholic friends that the Catholics are good at shame.
So shame is a very serious thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that. I've heard that quite. I grew up in a family, and to this day, it's true. My family's language is sports.
Sports, okay.
Yeah, I grew up in a family. When I go visit my family, we talk about sports. I don't have spiritual conversations. I'm done trying to have those.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a family. My mother was Irish Catholic, but when she met my dad was kind of an atheist, and she moved to London, and we had no religion. But what was interesting growing up, nobody in our world went to church. My mother had one friend who was Catholic, and she was Irish. I didn't grow up with anybody going to church. So then in a way, I'm really glad that happened, because I've just seen so many people be religiously damaged. And when they try to own their own spiritual journey, they have to heal from all this crap.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was lucky that I didn't have to do that. When I was living in South Carolina, I was living in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, there was this Baptist preacher, Reverend Lawton, and all my friends started to go to him, and he was absolutely fabulous. But then they ousted him out because he had an affair. But anyway, he was the first spiritual person that I ever would go and talk to. And then I started to get into metaphysics, probably 1985, 1986. And at that point, all the books about metaphysics were in the occult section. I don't know if that happened other places, but in Baptist South Carolina, those books were in the occult section.
Oh, yeah.
So
We're banning Harry Potter.
Yeah. And so
Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I was foreboding from that.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, from both.
So I started to read metaphysics, and at that time, a lot of it was really complicated. I'm not saying I'm not smart, but I'm not intellectually smart. Some of those old books were really complicated. And then I read something by Shirley MacLaine, and it was called Out on a Limb. And this was in the 80s, before she was like majorly out on a limb. And I felt like when I read that book, it was the first time that every page, I felt like I could have written it. I felt like, oh, this is what I believe. I didn't even know what I believed. But when I was reading that, I would write out, I would just copy page after page after page into this book. And so it was a very tough time for me in England. My father had died, and it got very ugly in England. You know, it got really ugly. And so I'd always thought that I wanted to do a cross-country trip by myself. And so I was watching something one day, and Shirley MacLaine came up on this talk show or something. And she said she was doing a series of workshops across the country. Well, I didn't know what a workshop was at that point, you know.
Right.
I'd never been to anybody who was spiritual like that.
That's where you build a birdhouse.
Yeah. And so I called the number, and then the day I got that flyer in, this was like January, what piqued my interest was March 5th, because that had been my mother's birthday. And it said Albuquerque, New Mexico. Well, I had no idea where that was.
Yeah.
So I looked at my Ron McNally, and I thought, oh my goodness, if you call and you make that an appointment, and you make a reservation for this in Albuquerque, whatever a workshop is, you'll do your cross-country trip. So I called and I made a reservation for March 5th. And then I thought, okay, that's good. So then I ended up doing this cross-country trip, and I filled my car with all these books. Do you ever remember Shakti Gawain? She wrote on creative visualization.
I'm not sure.
Okay, these are Yeah.
I'm not read on a lot of the stuff.
Okay. And this is
Yeah.
way before
Great.
your time. So I set off on this cross-country trip. I had a few different guys I was going to meet along the way. It was like my freedom as a woman trip. And so I went to Albuquerque, and there was like a couple of hundred people there. And it was the most incredible experience. I'd never meditated before, let alone meditated with 200 people.
Yeah.
And I ended up hooking up with this guy, of course, because it was my freedom trip.
Yeah.
And he said, you want to go to Santa Fe? You want to go to Taos? I'm like, sure, I'm just on a trip.
That's right.
So we went to Santa Fe, and then we went to Taos, and then I took him to the airport. And then I went out to California and had some more social fun until it got not fun anymore. And so I just needed to get away from everything. I had kind of created too much drama. And so I ended up, it was like April on the shores of Lake Tahoe. How I got there, I don't really know. And I rented a cabin. There was no one else around. And I finally thought, why don't you get those books out that had been in that box your whole trip? Because it had not been a spiritual trip so far. It had been like a sexual revolution trip.
That's spiritual.
Yeah, that was spiritual.
Yeah, yeah.
So the first book I got out was Creative Visualization. And so I was laying in this blanket and I was reading it, and I did my first. I kind of followed the steps and I did this creative visualization, and I saw myself living in Santa Fe in an old Adobe. Well, even though I'd driven through there, I didn't think I was going to do that. And I just knew to drive to Santa Fe. So I went from Lake Tahoe to Santa Fe. I didn't tell, that was before cell phones. So nobody knew where I was. And I wasn't very good at letting people know either, because to be honest, I didn't really want to talk to anybody. But so I ended up going to Santa Fe. I saw the house I had seen in my head, and I rented it. And because I didn't tell anybody, that nobody was going to tell me, you're nuts. What are you doing? Who do you know there?
Yeah.
And so for me, that was the first time I ever listened to my intuition. And I remember leaving Santa Fe and calling one of my friends, and she's like, you're out of your mind. I'm like, well, apparently this is what I'm doing. And a month later, I was living in Santa Fe, and my real spiritual journey began. So that's kind of what brought me to Santa Fe.
Santa Fe's got that energy. It's like
does.
it's like a vortex, like
It is.
similar.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. As how important is location to you think to
Well,
spirituality?
I didn't understand what it was for a couple of years. And there's something, you may have heard this. People a lot of times talk about Santa Fe by saying these mountains either suck you in or they spew you out. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
And it's so
many
true.
people told me that when I first moved here.
Yeah. For some of us,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is my home. And then literally you can see people get sucked out for different weird reasons. So that was kind of true. But for me, what happened was a couple of years later, I realized, what was it? And the reason I didn't get it, because I'd never had it before, it was that I found a sense of belonging in Santa Fe that I'd never had before.
Yeah.
That was
mean
what
like
it was.
community? Do you mean like community mindset or something?
Community, yes, but more than that.
You are so odd.
What's up, Oddville and Namaste, bitches? This is an ad asking you to buy my books. Season 1 of Pete and Gwendolyn Grew Up, and Season 1 of How to Write a Novel in 5 Years, A Hero's Journey, is available for sale at my website, jstheartist.com, as well as Amazon, obviously, barnesandnoble.com, and walmart.com. But if you're one of those cool cats that likes to shop locally, go down to your local bookstore, your favorite one, and ask them to order it for you. It helps them stay in business. It helps me sell books. People will get it out there. Everybody wins. All right. Pete and Gwendolyn Grew Up, and How to Write a Novel in 5 Years, A Hero's Journey. Go buy them today. Back to the show.
You're more like a game show host.
More than community.
Okay.
You know, I still don't have it. When I go back to London, even though I was born and raised there, I don't have a sense of belonging there.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a sense of belonging in South Carolina. So yes, it was, Santa Fe's been very kind to me people-wise. I have an incredible friendship group, and it's been very kind to me community-wise. But I think on a deeper level, it afforded me this opportunity to soften and really figure out who I was and what I thought about spirituality. Yeah. So So then I moved here, and then I started spiritual study. And there's so many different places to go in Santa Fe if you want to get into spirituality. And then quite a few years later, I was really depressed one night, because depression was a big deal for me. And I was at this guy's house. He was just a really good friend, and we were smoking pot, and he was drinking, and we were really high, and I was crying because I was so depressed. And he said, "You know what you need, sister? You need to go to church tomorrow." And I thought, oh, he's right. I need to go to church. And in my tears, I was like, you're right. Of course, he needed to go too, but that was a different point.
This guy with the whiskey bottle in his hand.
That's right. But anyway.
You're right with the Lord, man.
Yeah.
Right.
So I thought about it, and I'm like, well, I don't know. And then I thought, oh my goodness, there was this lady called Kathy Montserrat, who I knew from my work with children. Mm-hmm. And I really admired her. She's a PhD, Dr. Kathy Montserrat. I was very inspired by her. I kind of really looked up to her, and I knew she was married to a minister. Mm-hmm. So when I was thinking about when I got home, I was like, well, maybe I should figure out where her husband is. Because if she's married to him, he can't be all that bad. Maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
So the next day I showed up at the Santa Fe Center for Spiritual Living. I cried all the way through. I sat at the back row, far right. I cried all the way over. And the moment it was over, I was out that door, because I was not into meeting and greeting.
Yeah.
And for about the next 6 weeks, I went on a Sunday, never talked to anybody, came in just as it was starting, left. And then they said they were starting a class called Foundations, which is our first class. And it was like, well, why don't you take that? So this was like July probably. So the beginning of September, they offered a Foundations class. And I started taking classes. I took classes. I followed all the classes. So in our tradition, we have something called a spiritual practitioner. And to be a spiritual practitioner, it's about 2 years of classes. And then you go into prac studies, and prac studies is 2 years. And at the end of prac studies, you have an oral, you have an examination, and then you become a spiritual practitioner. And so that was how my spiritual journey, it wasn't a planned thing, it just evolved. And so that was how I was introduced to those teachings. And then it had become clear to me anyway. I had been facilitating a group that I needed, that my voice was my gift. Speaking, leading groups. And now, I work with everybody. I mean, they can be 6, they can be 66. I got something to say. So.
That's interesting. What would you say? Maybe this is a dumb question, but I haven't really fully worked it out in my mind, and maybe it doesn't even need to be a question. But is there a fundamental difference between like spirituality and religion?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you think that is at its core?
Well, I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
My father was an atheist. And so I had tiptoed in this Baptist church because I thought this minister was super cool. And so then, I started going on Sundays. And when my dad died, all of a sudden, these 2 deacons of the church were at my door. And I was like, oh my God, what are they doing here? Mm-hmm. And they came into my house and they said to me, sorry about your father. Did your father accept Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior before he died? And I burst out laughing and I said, good God, no. And in that moment, organized religion, I knew it couldn't work for me.
Yeah.
So one of the things for me, a difference in spirituality is, yes, we have some spiritual tenets, but we don't really tell people what to believe. You don't have to, we offer things. This is what Ernest Holmes teaches. And one of the big things for me is we don't have some big afterlife program. Because I cannot wrap around how anybody, this is very judgmental. Okay, you might want to cut this piece out.
No, we're all about it.
No, so.
We're very judgmental people. Don't worry.
Well, I do not understand why anybody who has a brain in their head understands why Jesus died for your sins. Why did he have to die for my sins? I don't understand. And so we don't have any afterlife program. What we believe is that the essence of our being is love, is spirit, is peace. And there's something about that essence that lives forever. But I don't know what that looks like. Ernest, all my teachings, it doesn't tell us what we look like. It looks like, but it's like, yeah, there's an eternal aspect of us.
Yeah.
And that kind of works.
There's something greater that doesn't have to be defined because, I mean, you can't.
You can't.
No, even if you remember past lives, like we've been talking about that a lot. It's like, it's still an invention of your mind's eye in this body right now. It's like,
exactly.
No, like it's, I mean, it could be real, it could be not real, but like what my psychedelic and visions look like is not the same as yours, but like they're as real as you and me to me and you.
Right, exactly.
But like, yeah, it's just to help us understand, but like nobody can tell you for sure.
No, but they do.
Yeah,
but they do.
Correction. They definitely can.
That right there, I think, is the fundamental difference between religion and spirituality. Is, you know, spirituality is you're working on, you're trying to change yourself, while religion is trying to change others.
Exactly. And so I'll give you a very simple example. We believe that Jesus is the great example, not the great exception.
Right.
Yeah, like, I mean, I am, and so are you.
Well, what's the difference between him and another ascended master? If you're gonna,
like we were talking about that too. Like Martin Luther King, he's a Jesus.
Yeah,
you could be an ascended master if you believe in that. I don't know. I'm certainly not anti-Jesus. I think Jesus is great. One of the greatest figures in history.
But there's been lots of guides that have been, in many ways, crucified for trying to liberate and bring peace to the world.
And I don't know where Jesus is, but if Jesus has some cognition about what's being done in his name, he is curling up in his grave about.
Well, it's the great quote is that if Jesus came back today, the last thing he would be is a Christian.
Exactly. No shit. Absolutely. So in Science of Mind,
wasn't like flip the tables in the churches.
Right.
Didn't want to be worshipped. Like
he was fine with paying taxes to Rome. He was like, who gives a crap? They build your roads. Worry about yourself.
Right.
Worry about your currency. Like, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Right.
They were like, what? We can't do that. The Romans they're anti-Jew. and you know, he was hated by everybody except for, like, you know, all the regular people.
Yeah. I would have let them hang me up too. It was like, really, guys? What the fuck?
It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so why we're called the Science of Mind is Ernest considered that we were a synthesis of the opinions of philosophy, the discoveries of science, and the revelations of religion. And so that's kind of, you know, we take from those three things. And the reason he called it the Science of Mind is because he believed that spiritual truths are provable, which if I go back to my forgiveness example proved that spiritual truth is possible, right? So but we don't, I mean, we use the word God, spirit, but I mean, I don't care what anybody calls it. So, I appreciate that about my tradition, that, you know, you get to decide for yourself. You get to take what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But organized religion does not work for me.
Well, organized religion is kind of like an oxymoron, in my opinion. How can you have an organized individual experience? You know?
Yeah.
It's kind of strange. It's like jumbo shrimp. It doesn't really exist. There's, you know,
that's funny.
Every single human has a different view of their spirituality inside of them.
Yeah.
They have a thought of what heaven looks like if they believe in heaven. They have a different notion of what faith means, like the big picture stuff, the big dogmas of life, faith, forgiveness.
Yeah, like our journey defines us, and we've all
sacrifice, shame. Yeah,
yeah, and another thing that when I moved here was just insane. I went to the International Folk Art Museum up on the top. Have you ever been there? Mm-hmm. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
But I saw a visual of what I had heard in the Baptist church, and that was their concept of hell. And they had this concept of heaven and hell in this big glass case, and there were demons and red-headed things, and that's something for me that I can't understand. That if you don't believe, and when I said to those two Baptist guys, oh, good God, no, you should have seen the look on their face, because what their face was telling me was my dad was going to hell.
Yeah.
That's what they believed.
Yeah.
They believed my dad was going to hell. And I remember, I hadn't been here long, I went up there and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is what Christians are teaching kids about.
Oh, fear.
Hell and fear. You know, I remember the youngest suicide I've ever responded to was a 10-year-old. Very Catholic. And I held children while they sobbed because according to their belief, their friend had gone to hell.
Yeah.
They were sobbing and crying because their friend had gone to hell.
Yeah, there's some real trauma to be experienced as a child with that. That's crazy. They should not ever think that.
No, that was, hell and damnation was so forced into me. Like, I can relate to that hard. It's like, I've walked around with so much fear of going to hell and shame for sinning of every little thing, just like swearing or sexual urges, everything. Like, there was, I mean, to the point to where, like, I'd wish that, like, I'd go to church on Sunday, get saved, and then, like, man, like, I can't maintain this. Like, I wish I would just, like, die right after getting saved. Because, like, I don't know, you can't commit suicide, because then you'll go to hell.
Right.
So it's like, you're trapped there. It's like, fuck, I gotta stay alive, can't do nothing. It's like, please, like, I'll just wipe the slate clean and just take me. I can't handle this.
Yeah.
It's too much pressure to maintain.
Yeah. And for me, it doesn't bring comfort. I mean, one of the things about my spirituality is, like I said earlier, I know that there's a place deep within me that is peace, that is love, and that can never leave me. I leave it.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I'm wigged out or I'm having a wobbly or I'm feeling a bit depressed, even though I may leave it, there's that little, I still have some cognition that there's a little thread that I'm still tied to that place within me that is peaceful. Now that gives me spiritual comfort, that I have that place to go back to. That gives me spiritual comfort. But I don't get my spiritual comfort from, you know, so I see some people with religion. And I actually, I think some people,
concept. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say what I saw, because I saw some people who became born again, and I was kind of shocked. And then it was like, oh my goodness, it's like they want to be told what to think and what to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue with the fact that there is a real craving inside of human, like, it's a human desire for some kind of spiritual connection. It is like, we need it. It's just, we don't know how. And, you know, the Bible is a very easy resource to get your hands on to try and fill that need, that appetite, you know?
Yeah. And the way it's sold, it's just like, it's so, it's sold with so much fear and like urgency or whatever. And like,
urgent.
And like to people that are really like lost and scared and in a bad place. It's like, I mean, you have to think about it, like, no disrespect to anybody's spirituality or religion, but like to just up and believe, like to go from nothing to up and believing like everything in the Bible, like all this is true. It's like, you got to be in a pretty weird place, right?
Well, it's
like subscribe to something like that. Like you got to be pretty lost. And so like, if you're lost and somebody is just like, I don't know. It's like it's the pitch, because you don't. It depends. Right. It depends on who you are. Like,
it goes
if you're
back
confident
to
you're going to get damnation, but if you're broken, you're going to get like love and peace, and then damnation once you've subscribed.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like spiritual. It's not just a light switch you turn on and like, all right, now I'm spiritual. Now I'm not. You know, it is.
Oh, now I'm saved.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, the concept. All of it's.
But I do think that the words born again have gotten a bad rap, because I think we can all be born again in every moment.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So I think that their concept of born again. I think I like that. I like the concept of born again because we can all be born again in every minute by the choices we make,
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. You should try to be born again.
Right. And
As
like,
often as you can be.
yeah, like the math of it is so universal. Like the spiritual math of what everybody does is exactly the same, just dressed up in a different equation or word problem. Like it's just A equals B divided by C, whatever. But like the asking of forgiveness or like being born again, it's just like, it's relieving yourself. Like you're just, I don't know, like it's hard to explain for me right now, but
Perfect for a podcast.
yeah, exactly. I miss this thing. But like, no, standing, like connecting with God and like, or like forgiving yourself is like the same as going up, standing in front of the church and like asking for forgiveness and waiting for somebody to pound your head back and like coming in tears. Cause like I've had real moments like that too. Like growing up in church, just like, well, I really felt forgiven. And like, I've also had that through mushroom experiences too. But it's like it's the act of it, but it's just too busy being.
You get the tingles.
Yeah, you get the tingles.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right. Yeah. Wow. What a great chat this has been.
Yeah. I feel saved.
Right. Yeah.
Huh?
I feel more lost than ever.
Right. All right, everybody repeat after me.
But I'm so glad that we met,
Yeah.
It really was a divine appointment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
absolutely.
perfect. It's awesome.
Well, what's next?
What's next?
What's the next step? What's the next, when's the next sermon? When's the next speech? When's the next?
I don't know. I mean, because I'm not in charge anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be looking for more places to speak because I need to be able to give my gift. But I also have an initiative called Stand Up for Kindness. I work with children. I'm a social emotional learning expert with children.
Okay.
And then I'm very active in the issues related to the unhoused.
Okay.
I'm the
Amazing.
co-chair of the Education Committee for Santa Fe Housing for All Collaborative. And we are part of a bigger deal of trying to foster solutions for the unhoused. So that's really important to me. And in fact, I asked John if he would be a speaker. One of the things that we do that's really powerful is so many people have stories around the unhoused, but they've never had a conversation with one. Everybody seems to think everybody's an alcoholic and a drug addict. And the truth is, put most of us on the streets with no money, no credit card, no phone, we'd be doing stuff within 2 or 3 weeks earlier. So one of the things that we do is we've got one on Saturday at the Democratic headquarters, which is kind of interesting. We go anywhere. We're not political and we're not religious. We go to different churches. But what we do is we have a panel. So we'll have 4 speakers. And they share their personal experience of being unhoused, whether they're currently unhoused or they've previously been unhoused. And they speak. You're not allowed to say anything. People just listen to these 4 stories. And then we open it up to Q&A. And so many times I see people coming in there, maybe really stuck in the problem. And you see this beautiful thing happen. I mean, to me, the best definition of a miracle is a shift in perception. Nothing has to change outside of our consciousness. The change happens in here. And so often I see people, you can see they've had a shift in perception, that now they're seeing the unhoused through the eyes of humanity. And that these are people to be loved. So that's really important to me. And as John has been couch surfing, I've actually asked him to contemplate being one of our speakers.
Think I can tell that whole story in 7 minutes?
You?
Yeah. I'll definitely have to write it down.
They say, could a person? Probably. Could you?
Yeah, a person could. But like, no, like, yeah, my unhoused situation is unique because like, I've been, like we were talking about it last week, I've been Forrest Gumping my way through this whole journey, man. Things have just been like working out for me. I've been blessed. I couldn't pay my rent because I couldn't work because of mental illness, and you can't really see that. And it's like, I'd like be easier if I had a limp and say, why can't you go around? It's like, oh, obviously, like, or if I think of myself as like like an athlete that just can't play anymore, but like you look fine, whatever. And so that's a thing. But I mean, I got a lot of assistance and help from different organizations keeping my house, and then all that help ran out. But like my friend Rob was there, let me crash in his bedroom or his spare bed for 4 months. And then Jason's couch has been here for me. Yeah. And I had a lot of tools to cope with it. Like, I'm fortunate that I've been putting in work on this kind of spiritual journey long before I ever expected to like be unhoused or whatever, or need it or whatever. You know, I have my spirituality, I have meditation, I have my yoga, like I have this podcast, I have friends and whatever. Like I have all these tools, and it's still super fucking hard.
Yeah, I think your story could be very, very beneficial.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's something that's really close to my heart, and we're very committed because we're having a really outrageous experience right now with the biggest shelter. I mean, the city's closing it down. It's really really a despicable situation.
Yeah, it's called Pete's Place.
Yeah, it's really it's scary, and there are people who
it's being shut down due to funding or due to just apathy or
no, it's a kind of a real long story, but we have this place called Pete's Place, and it's the Interfaith Shelter is the 501c3 that runs it. And the thing that the city does is they provide the space, and they have been begging the city to give more funding. And so then all of a sudden the city said they wouldn't renew their lease, they would go month to month. And unbeknownst to everybody, and this is where it's rather like what happened last week when Congress didn't know we were going to war. The mayor decided to hire a company from San Francisco to come in, that he was going to close out what's happening now, and then have this company come in who don't even have a good reputation. I mean, they have lawsuits against them, and it's really despicable the way that they're doing it. And usually when something like that happens, the city is supposed to put out an RFP. That's a request. You know, people are supposed to bid. As providers are supposed to be allowed to bid. They didn't even give the Interfaith Shelter the opportunity to put in a bid. They just told them they were going to be done.
Really?
Yeah. And Pete's Place is very much founded on the concept of volunteerism. They have something like 2,000 volunteers a year. I mean, most of us have volunteered there. I mean, the volunteers, they bring dinner every night. It's been a very beautiful thing. And they don't believe in volunteering. And I mean, I think it's good. They like to hire ex-cons, but they're not giving Pete's Place any idea about what's going to happen. And there are people who have been living there a few years, and they have no idea what's going to happen July 31st when
it's just
they're
around
out
the corner.
there. It's and so there's a lot of contention around it. And the truth is, there are so many people who might say they want a solution as long as it's not in their backyard.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I think that's like the root of it. Is just like that's in a populated place in Cerrillos, and they're building things left and right. Like Santa Fe is going to be all full of buildings in a little bit, and like everything's getting more expensive, and like the homelessness or the unhoused situation here in Santa Fe is so massive and out of hand. It's like that. Speaking from their terms, that brings the property value down. Yeah. So they don't want to see this. Like I heard some rumor that they were going to move it to Airport Road or something like that. That
was a myth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that myth got out of control, and actually there wasn't really any fact in that, but it got. Yeah. Somebody took it on, and then it's in the newspaper, and it's like, well, that's not even true.
Yeah, and even that, like you're so far out there, it's like getting into town, trying to have some kind of resource, do anything, make connections or whatever. It's like you either have to choose, okay, I'm going to stay around the shelter all day, or be out there and maybe not even be able to make it back.
Where do you live?
I'm in Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay.
It's my home.
And so
That's
there
where you're
is,
from?
Yep.
yeah, that's where we originally started this wild
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it's about 10,000 people greater than Santa Fe.
Oh, it's a bit bigger
It's
than
about
us?
85,000 there.
Okay.
Yeah, about 85,000. I didn't realize that it was bigger than Santa Fe.
Yeah, Santa Fe's like 73, I think.
Yeah, we're around that.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah,
so-
there's,
I wanted
there's
more of a small town
definitely
life.
there's definitely issues here with housing for sure. You know, I always go to if you rely on altruism or rely on the goodness of people, it's never going to be fixed just because bureaucracy is a much heavier stone to push uphill, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I think if only there was a way to like make it profitable to house people, you know.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. If it was profitable,
If it was profitable, things would be done so quickly. If it was profitable to not have wildfires, you know, if it was profitable
Yeah.
to, I don't know.
yeah. And so we have this, mayor who's going to be out in November, who's a rich white guy, not from here. And I mean, most of us who are in the trenches think that, he and his rich white folks are the ones that came up with this plan. And he's saying that he didn't need to do the process because he considers it's an emergency. And so because he's saying it's an emergency, they don't have to put out bids.
That's the loophole.
And this is what's insane. So they have been begging the city. The city gave them the place, but they've been begging for more funding. They are giving this company 1.5 million to come in and 8 million over the next 4 years. So 1.5 million to get them started. And then every year they're going to get 2 million.
Jeez.
You got money for that.
So all of a sudden he has money for that,
Money for that.
and so that's why those of us in the trenches are up in arms,
Yeah.
because it's just wrong. It's just wrong. So it's crazy.
There's ways to, I don't know. I'm a big believer in, and I don't want to keep you guys. I know my girlfriend's dog is over. He knows it's time to walk.
Well, I've got my dog here, but
It's like, you've been on it for an hour, Dad.
yeah,
Yeah,
this
he
one,
knows.
Go.
JB, he's over here. I have a 70-pound love. His girlfriend is staying with us right now.
Awesome.
But I took her to her house because she's 90 pounds. And he is the most mellow, sweet guy unless she comes around. And then he's like Jekyll and Hyde, and he's
It's wild.
yeah. Well, so I understand that. Sometimes he just looks at me like, we're supposed to go now. Well, it's been a pleasure to meet you.
It's been a pleasure. This has been a great conversation. I hope we can do it again.
Oh, absolutely. It would be wonderful.
I'd love to stay on top of what's going on with Pete's place too. I'd be curious to see the outcome there. And
It's going to be really fascinating to see what happens.
it's interesting. I'd love to be able to apply some of that to the issues here in Duluth too, just for my own mental practice, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it again.
Yes, I'd love to. That's awesome.
I would too.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for stopping by.
Have a splendid day.
Yes, Johnny T. Always good to see you, buddy.
See you too, sir. We're rocking these pods out now, man.
I'm loving it. It's been great.
Yeah, we're an actual show now. Got guests.
Yeah, years later.
Yeah.
It's no big.
5 years, 41 episodes later.
All right, y'all. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Namaste.
Namaste.
You are so odd.